Abracadabra, I sit on his knee. Presto, changeo, and now he is me. Hocus pocus, we take her to bed. Magic is fun. We're dead.
I like the dog. It's friendly.
Hello and welcome back to my channel Box Office Poison.
It's a household name.
If you're new here, my name is Moxie McMurder, and in this video I want to talk about Magic from 1978. Dolls are creepy. Fact. From the Great Gabbo to Dead of Night, Devil Doll, Billy from Saw and Dead Silence, dolls, and in particular ventriloquist dummies, are a perfect tool for horror. They're unnerving, I suppose because there's an element of the uncanny valley, or maybe it's just those dead eyes staring back at you, watching your every move.
Lifeless eyes, black eyes like a doll's eyes.
And so what a perfect vehicle for a psychological horror with themes of mental health, identity, and fear of success. Based on the book by William Goldman and starring Anthony Hopkins, and directed by Richard Attenborough, Magic is the story of a magician who tries to spice up his act by adding a foul-mouthed ventriloquist dummy called Fats to his routine, and he becomes a success.
We're gonna be a star.
On the verge of landing a TV special, he runs away to where he grew up because he wants to avoid taking the TV network's required medical exam in case they discover he has severe mental issues, including that even off stage, he cannot control Fats. Even the trailer for Magic was deemed too scary for TV. Angry parents called broadcasters to complain that it had given their children nightmares, and you can see why. Richard Attenborough agreed to direct Magic and A Bridge Too Far in exchange for financing for his dream project, Gandhi. Apparently Gene Wilder was the original choice for Corky, and director Richard Attenborough and writer William Goldman wanted him, but the producer, Joseph E. Levine, refused, saying he thought any comedians in the film would distract from the serious nature of the story. And so Anthony Hopkins was brought in, and while I can absolutely see Wilder in the role, and I've no doubt it would have been excellent, Hopkins is still a perfect choice to play Corky. Hopkins learned to do magic and studied the art of ventriloquism for the role of Corky. He learned how to project his voice, how to use a dummy, and so when you see scenes with Corky and Fats, Hopkins is actually doing the voice for Corky. He's acting against himself, and it's fascinating to watch. As I said earlier, Magic is based on the book of the same title, and so often when it comes to book adaptations, the common feedback is that the book was better. Look, I'm guilty of saying this all the time, and I think it's probably because when we read a book, most of us are creating a movie version of it in our minds. So the film has already been made by us, and what we imagine is the perfect image. So it makes sense that some of us feel let down by film adaptations of our favourite books. When looking at a film that's been adapted from a book, you have to take into consideration that this is an adaptation, and therefore a lot of creative liberties can be taken. Whether a film is faithful to a book is definitely a consideration when analysing or critiquing it, but that's not the be-all and end-all of critique. You need to meet the film on its own terms, what it chooses to focus on, and whether the film has the same themes and messages as the book is a far more interesting starting point for a critique. Compromises will have to be made, and in this particular case, the cuts they made to the book's narrative make sense. While the scenes in the book give plenty of background to Corky's character, it's not necessary in the context of the film, because they can show what they can't tell. For example, we don't need to see Corky and Peggy in high school. We don't need to see Corky driving his magician mentor Merlin to various performances, or even the act of learning and performing magic. Everything we need to know is in Hopkins' acting choices. Anthony Hopkins really excels in playing characters who are reserved and measured, and Corky is a good example of that. In the book, Corky is a little bit different. For a start, he's known to be a hit with the ladies, despite his introverted character. But aside from a few things, the character is very similar to what's in the book. Magic is a pretty faithful adaptation, which makes sense, because the author, William Goldman, wrote the screenplay and a lot of the dialogue is lifted straight from the book. Side note, William Goldman won the Edgar Award for Best Motion Picture Screenplay from the Mystery Writers of America in 1979 for this film. The biggest departure from the book is the removal of a scene where Corky and Fats first meet. In the book, Merlin passes away and Corky wants to stay in his apartment, but he can't afford the rent, and after a bad performance at a nightclub, he decides to take his own life. He turns on the gas, lies down on the sofa, ready to fall asleep, and as he's losing consciousness, a disembodied voice appears and convinces him to get up and switch off the gas. He's got a great future ahead. He really can't miss it. It's a really great part of the book because Corky's just talking to this voice, and we've never even been told that there's a ventriloquist dummy in the apartment. Although there are references to Corky whittling quite a bit in the book, and it's sort of implied that he's created the doll. The first time we see Fats in the book is in the next chapter, where Corky is performing his magic, only this time with Fats, and the audience really responds to the dummy. The book itself starts with what appears to be a diary entry written by Fats, who worries that Corky is losing his grip on reality and doesn't know how to help him. These entries, in what is known as the Wisdom According to Fats, appear throughout the book, but more worrying is the stamp at the bottom of the entry, which reads, "The contents of this entire journal will be listed as Police Exhibit D." So from the get-go, we know this story is going to end badly. Books and film have often stigmatised mental health, whether they mean to or not, and unfortunately magic does fall into this category of insinuating that people with mental illness are violent and potentially murderous. On a personal level, like real talk, I've struggled with mental illness, and I personally don't find the trope offensive, but I absolutely understand why some folk get upset, especially when you consider that most mental health representation is pretty poor at the best of times. When it comes to Corky's character and what he's actually going through in both the film and the book, could come down to dissociative identity disorder. He's also experiencing something referred to as the Jonah Complex, which is about fear of success and how that fear stops you from achieving goals that are within your grasp.
It's just success, kid. Please believe me. You want success, but you're afraid of it. Now that happens to everybody at this stage.
I'm not afraid.
So you stay right there. I'll be right over and we'll talk it through.
I'm not afraid.
Hang tight, kid. I'm on my way.
I won't be here!
Anthony Hopkins as Corky is such great casting. He has a quiet confidence, and he comes across as quite a sympathetic character. I mentioned that in the book he's a bit of a ladies' man, and there's a dark subplot about these women that Corky dates never being seen again. But his confidence is fake. It's bravado, and he's terribly insecure. In the film, we see the more sensitive and timid side of him. He's almost childlike. When we see him assert himself when it comes to not taking the medical exam required by the TV studio, we see more of his unbalanced behaviour and anger. Fats is foul-mouthed and antagonistic. He can say what Corky can't, which is an interesting dynamic, especially when you consider that Fats is an expression of Corky's frustrations. As Corky becomes more dependent on Fats, we discover that actually, Fats is just as insecure as Corky. As soon as Corky shows any sign that he might go somewhere without Fats, he becomes jealous and menacing, culminating in murder. And Margret is wonderful as Peggy Ann Snow. She's a delight. She plays Corky's love interest from his teens, and when he meets up with her, she's clearly attracted to him, but she's also aware that he may be in love with the teenage version of herself. She's not happy with how her life has turned out. She's older and is slightly insecure about how she looks, and she knows her husband, a violent alcoholic who she dated in high school, is cheating on her. Peggy's got a sense of humour, and she seems to bring something out of Corky. He starts to feel like he can get a better grip on his sanity and his life in general. He puts all of his hopes and fears into having a relationship with Peggy, and Fats cannot let that happen. Burgess Meredith plays Corky's agent Ben Green, or Gang Green as Fats calls him, and does a wonderful job highlighting the balance of being an agent, always looking for their cut, and someone who seems to genuinely care for Corky's well-being. And seeing Burgess Meredith in anything is a delight, a joy.
Kid, I have lived through Tallulah Bankhead and the death of vaudeville. I don't scare easy.
One of the many great things about magic is the attention to detail, and there's one moment that really stands out to me. At the end of the film, Fats and Corky are wearing identical clothing, and there's a moment where he looks more like the doll than ever. The darkened eyebrows hiding in the shadows, representing a loss of identity. He's now Fats, but Fats is really Corky. So who is influencing who? I don't want to spoil the end of the film. If you've seen Magic before, I definitely recommend giving it a rewatch because it's excellent and it's one of those films that really benefits from multiple viewings. If you haven't seen Magic, I really hope this video has piqued your interest. I think it's a great film and it's a good book too. I really enjoy both on their own terms. There's a well-known story that Anthony Hopkins was allowed to take Fats home so that he could get used to working with the dummy. However, he wound up being so unnerved by it that he ended up calling the consulting ventriloquist in the middle of the night, threatening to throw Fats into the canyon if someone didn't come and get the doll immediately. And apparently it was Richard Attenborough who ended up going to Hopkins' house to calm him down. I've always wondered how true this story is, because in interviews with Hopkins and Attenborough, they talk about how Hopkins became quite fond of Fats and actually missed him when filming was over.
Of course, so much of the film revolves around this dummy, this ventriloquist dummy. The dummy is named Fats.
Fats, yeah.
As the director, what sort of a feeling did you have to have towards the dummy?
Well, I think it wasn't limited to me. I mean, it was limited, the whole crew felt the same. He became, I mean, it was, by the end of the movie, you referred to Fats as a person, as a character. I mean, it started off as a gag at the beginning of the movie, that, you know, everybody would laugh if anybody referred to him in a sense of normality. By the end of the movie, it was absolutely accepted. And there were 50, 60, 70 people, all who referred to Fats in the normal course of events. So that suddenly one thought, my God, it really is possible. It really is very easy for somebody who lives cheek by jowl with a dummy to achieve a total acceptability of that person as a person, that doll as a person, which of course is what happens to Corky.
By the end of the film, how did you feel towards that dummy, Fats?
I was very fond of him. The moments I hated him intensely because it was so difficult to work with sometimes, you know. I've been asked this question a few times today, in fact, and I get a sense now, it's like a memory. I'm beginning to miss Fats. Actually, he used to make me laugh a lot. He used to make me laugh. I used to see him sitting in this little chair, you know, staring at a wall, and I used to get a kind of kick out of him. And I know some people were frightened of him. He's only a piece of wood.
Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider becoming a subscriber and giving this video a thumbs up. I'd love it if you'd leave a comment below. Let me know if you've heard of the film, if you've seen it, what you thought of it. Give me those opinions. If you really enjoyed this video, you can help support this channel by buying me a coffee.
Coffee and contemplation.
I'll post the link to my coffee account in the description below. As always, have a great day and stay spooky.